In today's episode of the Beyond Psychology podcast, we're going to talk about what might be the most valuable skill in our rapidly changing world: the courage to unlearn what we think we know. Imagine your mind not as a fortress to defend, but as a garden to tend. Some ideas flourish, others wither, and the entire ecosystem thrives only when you're brave enough to uproot what no longer serves you. This is what Adam Grant calls rethinking: the willingness to doubt what you believe, to challenge what you know, and to reconsider what you've been taught. In his groundbreaking book, Think Again, Grant argues that in our information-saturated age, intelligence alone isn't enough. As he puts it, intelligence is usually seen as the ability to think and learn. But in a rapidly changing world, there's another set of cognitive skills that might matter more: the ability to rethink and unlearn. How many of us have the courage to say those three difficult words? I was wrong? How many opportunities do we miss because we're too attached to outdated ideas? And what might we gain if we mastered the art of rethinking? Today, we'll unlock the science of changing your mind and discover why it might be the most important skill you never knew you needed. Most of us think we're open-minded. We pride ourselves on our willingness to consider different perspectives. But in reality, we spend most of our time in one of three mental modes that prevent genuine rethinking. Preacher mode. When our deeply held beliefs are challenged, we deliver passionate sermons defending our views. Here's why I'm right, we insist, without considering alternatives. Prosecutor mode. When we spot flaws in others' reasoning, we build cases against them, finding evidence to discredit their arguments while overlooking holes in our own logic. Politician mode. When seeking approval, we campaign for our audience's support, tailoring our messages to win their favor rather than pursue truth. These modes trap us at what Grant calls Mount Stupid, that psychological peak where limited knowledge breeds maximum confidence. As he writes, the first rule of the Dunning-Kruger Club is, you don't know you're a member of the Dunning-Kruger Club. When did you last find yourself in one of these modes? Perhaps defending a political position, arguing with a spouse, or dismissing feedback at work. These moments aren't just lost opportunities for growth, they're active barriers to it. The alternative to these closed mindsets is thinking like a scientist. Scientists don't preach conclusions. They develop hypotheses. They don't just prosecute ideas, they test them. They don't campaign for approval. They revise their views based on new evidence. As Grant explains, the smarter you are, the more you might struggle to update your beliefs. Intelligence can become a trap when it leads to overconfidence. The true mark of an agile mind isn't knowing everything, it's questioning what you know. Consider Jean-Pierre Bougams, one of the world's top election forecasters. In 2015, when Donald Trump announced his candidacy, experts gave him only a 6% chance of winning the Republican nomination. Bougams initially shared this view, but as evidence accumulated, he did something remarkable. He changed his mind. By mid-September, Bougams had revised Trump's odds to over 50%, making him an outlier among forecasters. While others remained anchored to their initial judgments, Bougams embraced the evidence and updated his thinking. When asked why, he explained simply, "Accept the fact that you're going to be wrong. Try to disprove yourself." This scientist mindset requires three key elements that form a continuous cycle: humility, knowing what you don't know; doubt, questioning what you do know; curiosity, seeking new knowledge. When was the last time you applied this cycle to one of your deeply held beliefs? Most of us fall into one of two traps when calibrating our confidence. Some develop what Grant calls armchair quarterback syndrome, where confidence exceeds competence. Like Davio Oddsson, who, despite lacking economic training, became governor of Iceland's central bank and helped trigger the country's financial collapse in 2008. Others suffer from imposter syndrome, where competence exceeds confidence. Like Hala Tómasdóttir, who almost talked herself out of running for president of Iceland despite her qualifications. The sweet spot lies in what Grant calls confident humility, having faith in your abilities while acknowledging the limits of your knowledge. Humility is often misunderstood, Grant notes. One of the Latin roots of humility means from the earth. It's about being grounded, recognizing that we're flawed and fallible. This confident humility isn't about lacking confidence. It's about focusing that confidence on your capacity to learn rather than what you already know. It's saying, I'm confident in my ability to learn, but humble about what I currently understand. Who do you know that embodies this confident humility? How might you cultivate more of it in yourself? Perhaps the most counterintuitive insight from Grant's book is that there can be profound joy in discovering you're wrong. Being wrong isn't failure, it's growth. Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman exemplifies this mindset. When presented with evidence contradicting his views, Kahneman exclaimed, "That was wonderful. I was wrong." When Grant asked him about this reaction, Kahneman explained, "Being wrong is the only way I feel sure I've learned anything." To experience this joy yourself, Grant suggests two critical detachments. First, detach your opinions from your identity. When your beliefs become part of who you are, changing them feels threatening. As Grant advises, who you are should be a question of what you value, not what you believe. Second, detach your present from your past. As investor Ray Dalio puts it, if you don't look back at yourself and think, "Wow, how stupid I was a year ago," then you must not have learned much in the last year. These detachments free you to evolve without feeling like you're losing yourself. They transform being wrong from a threat to an opportunity. When was the last time you felt this joy of discovery? What might be standing between you and this liberating experience? Rethinking isn't just an individual endeavor, it's something we practice together through constructive conflict. Grant distinguishes between two types of conflict: relationship conflict, personal emotional clashes, and task conflict, debates about ideas and opinions. Research across more than 100 studies shows that while relationship conflict harms performance, task conflict can boost creativity and decision-making. The Wright brothers epitomize this distinction. Their legendary arguments weren't personal attacks, but passionate explorations of ideas. When designing the crucial propeller for their airplane, they argued so intensely that their sister threatened to leave the house. Yet the next morning, they picked up the debate where they left off, but without the emotions. This productive conflict led to their breakthrough insight. The absence of conflict is not harmony, Grant explains, citing research. It's apathy. The key is approaching disagreements as dances, not battles. In ballet, dancers don't succeed by tripping their partners. They elevate each other through coordinated movements. Similarly, in productive disagreements, we don't win by demolishing others' ideas, but by exploring them to find deeper truths. Brad Bird, the Oscar-winning director at Pixar, deliberately sought out people he called pirates, contrarians who would challenge the status quo when making The Incredibles. These disagreeable people help the team rethink their assumptions and create breakthrough innovations. How might you foster more productive conflict in your own relationships? Where could you benefit from a few more pirates in your life? When trying to change someone's mind, our instinct is to push harder, to pile on reasons and evidence. Yet Grant shows this approach typically backfires. In a fascinating experiment, IBM's AI system project debater faced champion debater Harish Natarajan. Despite the computer's access to millions of articles and studies, Natarajan persuaded more people because he emphasized common ground before disagreement, focused on just 2 or 3 key points rather than overwhelming with many arguments, asked thought-provoking questions instead of making definitive statements. These techniques work because they treat persuasion as a dance rather than a war. As Grant writes, a good argument is not a war. It's more like a dance that hasn't been choreographed, negotiated with a partner who has a different set of steps in mind. This approach even works with the most extreme views. Consider Daryl Davis, a black musician who has convinced over 200 Ku Klux Klan members to leave the organization. His strategy? Not preaching or prosecuting, but simply asking, "How can you hate me when you don't even know me?" By listening rather than attacking, he opened minds that seemed permanently closed. How might your own persuasion attempts change if you approach them as dances rather than battles? Perhaps the most powerful technique for facilitating rethinking is what psychologists call motivational interviewing, an approach that helps people find their own motivation to change. Consider Arnaud Gagneur, a doctor who uses motivational interviewing to address vaccine hesitancy. Rather than bombarding reluctant parents with facts about vaccine safety, he asks open-ended questions about their concerns, engages in reflective listening without judgment, affirms their desire to protect their children, summarizes their thoughts, and respects their autonomy. When Marie-Hélène Etienne Rousseau was reluctant to vaccinate her premature son, Toby, Arnaud didn't lecture her or order her to change. He listened to her fears, acknowledged the confusion around vaccine information, and respected her as someone who wanted the best for her child. Before leaving the hospital, Marie-Hélène had Toby vaccinated, and later had her older children vaccinated too. As she explained, Arnaud told me that whether I chose to vaccinate or not, he respected my decision as someone who wanted the best for my kids. Just that sentence. To me, it was worth all the gold in the world. Why does this approach work? Because, as Grant notes, the person most likely to persuade you to change your mind is you. When people feel heard rather than judged, they become open to rethinking. When might you use these techniques in your own challenging conversations? The principles of rethinking extend beyond individuals to organizations and communities. Grant contrasts performance cultures, which focus on flawless execution, with learning cultures which value growth and improvement. In performance cultures, people hide mistakes to avoid looking incompetent. In learning cultures, they share errors so everyone can learn from them. This distinction became tragically clear at NASA. In 2003, the Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated upon re-entry, killing all 7 astronauts. Investigation revealed that engineers who had raised concerns were silenced or ignored, a failure of rethinking that mirrored the earlier Challenger disaster. A learning culture requires 2 key ingredients working in tandem: psychological safety, the belief that you won't be punished for making a mistake or voicing a concern; process accountability, evaluating decisions based on the quality of thinking, not just the outcomes. When psychological safety exists without accountability, Grant explains, people tend to stay within their comfort zone. When there's accountability but not safety, people tend to stay silent. When we combine the two, we create a learning zone. After the Columbia disaster, NASA worked to build this balance. Ellen Ochoa, who later became director of the Johnson Space Center, started carrying note cards with questions to challenge assumptions. What leads you to that conclusion? What might happen if it's wrong? When a countdown began in 2006, Ochoa was the sole dissenter, voting against launch due to sensor issues. Instead of being silenced, her concerns were heard, and the launch was delayed. The problem turned out to be serious enough that NASA stood down for months to fix it. What would it take to build more of a learning culture in your own workplace, family, or community? Finally, Grant applies rethinking to our life plans. Many of us fall victim to what psychologists call identity foreclosure, committing to a sense of self before we've explored our options. Grant's cousin Ryan exemplifies this pattern. From kindergarten, Ryan was set on becoming a doctor. He checked all the right boxes through college, medical school, and a grueling neurosurgery residency. But partway through his training, Ryan burned out. Although he completed his residency, he later confessed, "If I could do it over, I would have gone a different route." Students who are the most certain about their career plans at 20, Grant observes, are often the ones with the deepest regrets by 30. The solution isn't to abandon plans entirely, but to write them in pencil rather than ink. Grant suggests regular life checkups to reassess whether our aspirations still align with our evolving selves. When did you form the aspirations you're currently pursuing, and how have you changed since then? Have you reached a learning plateau in your role or workplace? What would you do differently if you could start fresh today? To adapt an analogy from E.L. Doctorow, Grant writes, planning your life is like driving at night in the fog. You can only see as far as your headlights, but you can make the whole trip that way. When was the last time you questioned your life path? What might be due for rethinking? Rethinking isn't just a skill, it's a form of liberation. When we detach our identities from our beliefs, we free ourselves to grow beyond the limitations of our past thinking. A hallmark of wisdom, Grant concludes, is knowing when it's time to abandon some of your most treasured tools and some of the most cherished parts of your identity. This willingness to rethink allows us to see the world with fresh eyes. It enables us to connect more deeply with others by bridging divides of understanding. It opens doors to possibilities we might otherwise never consider. The most successful thinkers aren't those who are always right. They're those who are willing to be wrong. As Jeff Bezos puts it, people who are right a lot listen a lot, and they change their mind a lot. If you don't change your mind frequently, you're going to be wrong a lot. So I leave you with this challenge. What belief might you rethink today? What opinion have you held so tightly that it's time to loosen your grip? What might you discover if you approach just one conversation with the humility, doubt, and curiosity of a scientist? In a world of constant change, our ability to update our thinking may be our greatest strength. It's time to think again. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.